So you can add your own property sets as well. Now, it's important to understand that there are a lot of available property sets, and Building Smart has already done a lot of the work in deciding what properties are available to which classes. And it's important as much as possible to use the presets. And every single one that's a preset has the prefix pset underscore. And that's just a convention made by Building Smart. It may change in the future, but that's what it is right now. And it's important to stick to them because that's one of the big problems of having structured BIM data. When people start naming property sets whatever they want and giving attributes, whatever name they want, that's when things become messy because you can't expect to find the information you're looking for in a particular location. So it's best to familiarize yourself with the list here. You might not always find it, and for that purpose, you also have the ability to create your own property set. And you'll notice that one comes out of the box called custom pset. So I'll just delete the two property sets I already have assigned. And if I click custom pset and I click add pset, this is an example which you can then customize yourself. So I have an example numeric property and an example string property. And you can type whatever you want in here. And you can modify it to give it your own name instead of custom pset, as well as your own attribute names and data types instead of numeric property and string property. Now, where that exists is inside the BlenderBIM add-ons folder under BIM data. Sorry, no, it could be in schema. Let me check. Where did I place it? Yeah, BIM data pset. And in pset, you can see there is a pset custom.ifc. And if I open that pset custom.ifc, you can see it has a bit of text, and this is an IFC file. And these define the name, custom pset, as well as the two attributes that we're entering in, numeric property and string property. It gives a description of it as well as the data type. So a count measure is an integer. I think it's a positive integer. I'll have to double check that. And a label is basically a short label. Think of it like a 255 character limited string, just to get your mind around it. It probably isn't, but it's similar in intention, I believe. So if we go, you can either edit this text file manually if you understand the IFC specification, but there's actually a property set authoring module in BlenderBIM. So in the scene properties, you can see IFC property sets here. And I have a file open, so that's wrong. You can see there's two custom property sets right now. There's pset custom and IFC 2x3 geolocation. And what you can do is if you go inside, and each one of these represents a file in this pset folder, because you can group property sets into a file. So one file can define many property sets. So let's say your company has a standard. You'd say, okay, for all health projects which we're doing, our company has a standard of these 10 custom property sets. We're going to distribute it in this one file and give it out so we can use it for all health projects. And then we're going to have another file for all defense projects, which has a set of properties associated with it, and so on. So you select the file that you're interested in, and then it will tell you all of the property sets inside that file. So in this case, the pset custom file only has one IFC property set called custom pset. And if I edit it, I press the edit button, it will import it from the file. You can see the name, the description, a template type, applicable entity as well. And this is the most interesting bit. It has the various attributes. So I can add a new property to here. So I can say my example property. I think maybe they should not have spaces in them. I'll have to double check. and I can give it a description, and I can say what data type it is. So if, let's say, this should hold a string or a label, I can say this is a label or a text, but you can see there's lots of data types here. The majority of them are specific to the services discipline. So things like electric charge measure, for example, or luminous flux measure. But for most of the cases, if you're just doing a sort of generic piece of metadata, you can probably stick to the ones on the bottom left, which are things like integer or true or false, or text or label. If it's an ID which needs to be unique, you can say it's an IFC identifier, for example, or a date, and so on. So we'll leave that as integer. Now, over here, this is the important bit. So remember how I said previously that certain properties only apply to certain types of classes? That's where you specify it. So this custom pset will apply to anything which is an IFC object. So a wall is an IFC object, a door is an IFC object, and that's why I can assign this property set to them. But I can say that this custom pset should only apply to window, for example. And if I spelled that correctly, IFC window, now it will do that. I can also choose from a variety of template types, and IFC has specific rules around how properties can be assigned. They can be assigned to just the object itself as an instance, or it can be assigned to the type of an object. So let's say I want a certain property set not to apply to doors, but to apply to all the door types in my project. So in that case, I'd select this option. It's also possible for me to select an override option, which means that you can supply it either at the type level or at the object level. If both are supplied, then the object will override the type property. We'll leave that as the default for now. And you press this button to save it back. And let's create a brand new property set from scratch, and we'll call this, we'll call it new pset. I won't change that. We'll give it a name, and this one will only apply to IFC door, and we'll say it can be applied to the type and be overridden by the object as well. And we'll add in some attribute, give it a description, and say this is an integer, save it back. And now I think at the moment you need to restart Blender for it to recognize it. So let's do that. And hopefully this will work. So if I now assign this to be a door, I made it. And if I look under there, you can see new pset is there. Now, if I create another object, which is not a door, and I call this a slab, you can see that I don't get the choice to pick new pset, whereas this one I do. And if I click on add pset, you can see I have my newly created some attribute, and so on. And you might wonder, like, why is this so painful? Why can't I just, press a plus button here and create a new attribute and just type it in on the fly? And that's because the whole purpose of IFC is to standardize how properties and attributes are stored. And so allowing users to create them on the fly is the easiest way for things to not become standardized. So unfortunately, it is a few extra steps, but it does mean that you define your properties in an extremely structured way that can then be distributed to anybody else. So, for example, this file, if I load it up again, you'll see there's now new data in there, which defines our new pset, which I can then distribute as a company-wide standard or a project-wide standard or whatever it happens to be.